Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McEllis. And before we get started with the introduction of our beautiful guest, let's just remind everyone to please like, subscribe, share. And it does help our algorithms. It helps the channel circulate so others can maybe gather some important information and have them touch them versus not going through the algorithm. So we need your support by hitting the like, subscribe, share, and we welcome all comments, questions, concerns that you might have. So the next time our guest is on, maybe your question will be asked. So without further ado, I am about to introduce someone who I had the pleasure of sitting and chit-chatting with about a month ago in another state. And she spoke at a conference and it was wonderful. So she's got a lot of insight, and her name is Maureen St Germain. And it is so good to see you again.
Likewise, and I'm happy to be here. And it was so fun sitting next to you. It was like you're a magnet, I wanted to come and talk to you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, I think when you're on similar frequencies and you want to get above the muck and talk about something that's not so, muckish, I think two people can resonate so well and boom, and that's kind of how our conversation, we could have just sat there all night and ignored everybody, but we couldn't.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
So what do we want to talk about today? I know we mentioned something about the higher self, and I think for a lot of people, the question is like, what exactly is the higher self and what's the
Mhm.
oversoul and what are those things? I have my idea of what I know it is because those are the messages I receive from my oversoul, my higher self, from the big kahunas of the soul itself, source creator right next to that. So can you please share what it is you want to talk about with the higher self and how that works and how people can relate and how they could tune into meeting their own?
Sounds good. Um, I I've been in the spiritual uh, field all my life, and even as a child, I was very plugged in and very connected to spirit. And as a young adult, before I even finished high school, I had read the Casey material, and I studied with many different teachers. And the idea of the higher self really came to the front for me. And there was one teacher I worked with that talked a lot about the higher self, but never told us how to connect with the higher self or to know for sure if it's your higher self talking to and all of that. So I set about to find those answers and also to then teach the students that I was teaching, because by that time I was teaching. And I discovered that there's a very simple and easy protocol that anyone can do for 6 weeks. And at the end of that 6 weeks, they will have 100% accuracy with their higher self. And everyone who has practiced what I have taught tells me the same thing. It really works. And it's saved me in a whole bunch of ways. So it's very simple. And I'd be happy to take people through it right now if you'd like.
Oh, I think that's an excellent idea. Let's do that.
Okay. So if you are at a place where you can write something down, put the paper and pencil in front of you. Otherwise, don't worry about it. And then close your eyes, feet flat on the floor, hands in any position you like that makes you happy. And then allow yourself to think about something that makes you really happy. Holding a babe or a pet, walking on the beach or in the mountains. And take a moment and just focus on that feeling. And then as you do so, allow your awareness to pick up some of that energy that's in your heart and send it up your pranic tube, past your throat chakra, your third eye, your crown, all the way up to the eighth chakra, where the portal to your higher self is. And then we invite the higher self to join us in our hearts. Now, as we do this, we're also telling the higher self, and you can do this at home, higher self, I really want to improve my connection. I want to have a direct connection. And then you say to the higher self, I am ready to receive my symbol or signal for yes. And most people get a symbol or signal. They'll get a feeling, like a rush in their body, or a ping in their ear, or a this tummy skips. Something happens in their physical form. A few people actually receive the word yes, and that's totally okay too. So again, ask your higher self, show me again my symbol or signal for yes. Thank you. Write it down. Higher self, show me my symbol or signal for no. Again, if you have your eyes closed, you might see something like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You might see a color. You might see a geometric shape. Some people see a star tetrahedron for yes, and then a circle for no, or something like that. Again, higher self, show me my symbol or signal for no. Write it down. Thank you. Higher self, show me my symbol or signal for neutral. What does neutral look like, feel like, taste like, sound like? Again, higher self, show me my symbol or signal for neutral. Neutral is not maybe. So don't substitute the word maybe for neutral. They're different. Again, write it down, whatever you get. Now, there's a few people who don't get anything, and you can just write me, and I'll take you through another process if you want. A small percentage of the people of the population don't get anything, and those people who don't get anything, when we go through this little exercise, they're highly mental, and the good news is they've got a very strong mental body, and they have good mental acuity, and that kind of runs the show for everything. So it's not a bad thing. It's just that your mental powers have gotten a little over the top. Okay, now what you do for 45 days, you ask unimportant, insignificant questions that you don't care about. So if you don't care whether you wear a blue shirt or a beige shirt, then you ask your higher self, is it in my highest and best good to wear the blue shirt? And you should get an answer. A higher self, is it my highest and best? If you get a no, then you move on to the next color, and so on. And you only ask about things you don't care about during this 6 weeks of practice, because it's all about practice and developing the recognition. And the reason you ask about things you don't care about is because your ego is doing a great job of taking care of you. And your ego is going to jump in and tell you what to do if you ask about things you really care about. So if you're on a hot date and your boyfriend loves to see you in red, and it's maybe your second or third date, you're gonna put on something red. But that's not a good question to ask. If your favorite dessert is chocolate chip cookies, don't ask, just enjoy. So that's how you do it. And there's 3 basic rules of thumb. Number 1, only important, unimportant, insignificant questions that you don't care about and that you are willing to do or not to do. So, you want to be clear. If I really want that ice cream, don't ask, just enjoy. Secondly, when you ask, you always ask the same way. Higher self, is it my highest and best good? And you always follow through. That means that if you start to ask, you must follow through. So, one of my favorite desserts is chocolate chip cookies. I don't have them very often, but one day I asked my higher self when I'm standing in a restaurant, and my higher self said no. And then my friends who were with me said, do you want a cookie? We know you love these. No, thank you. So you got to follow through. And then the third part is you do the practice for 6 weeks and you don't do any divination. So you set aside your pendulum, you set aside your muscle testing, and any other form of divination that you might use. And why do you do that? So that you don't try to learn French and German at the same time. So you leave everything else aside and you focus on this one practice for only 6 weeks. Now, the cool thing is after 6 weeks, you have it down, and it will be with you for the rest of your life, which is phenomenal. And then you can use it in cooking, you can use it in making little decisions and big decisions. And it is just the most amazing thing to know. I had a woman in France who had taken a course from me, and she saw that I was coming back to France, and she said, "Can I buy you a cup of tea?" And when we sat down, she said, "I wanted to share with you that I'm starting a business, and a lot of things that I'm doing, my friends tell me now that we've tried that, that won't work. But I get guidance. My higher self says, go ahead, it's okay. And my friends come back to me and say, how could you know that it would work for you this time?" And she says, I always laugh because they're not ready to hear about the higher self. So that's the easy protocol and the easy practice. And at the end of 6 weeks, so the other thing I recommend is you look at today's date and you add 6 weeks and you know when your end date is, because it's a lot easier to remember a future date than it is to when did we take that class? When did I hear that lady talk? When did we, whatever. So I like to ask people, go ahead and figure out what day today is, and then add 45 days and know your end date. And if you can, tie it to a holiday, tie it to Thanksgiving or Christmas or, first of the year, whatever date is close to that 45 days. And that way you really remember. And after the 45 days, you can ask any question you want. So it's 3 simple parts to the protocol. And we've already checked in and gotten your symbol or signal. And so there you have it. There's a lot more to that. If anybody wants to know more, they can find out more in the book called Beyond the Flower of Life, which is, it's this book. And it's in chapters 4 and 5. There's a lot more information on how it works and why it works.
Yes.
So that's our higher self tool, and it's really, really good.
And it sounds like so much fun because, it's like, let's say, you go into your closet and you're like, higher self, what color should I wear today? But you personally see a color that, oh, I like that shirt. I think I'm going to wear that one. But you stop, you ask, and it may say, you're going to wear this one, not that one. So instead of
No, it's
fighting
not
with,
like that.
it's
It's not
not.
like that. No,
Okay.
it's more like your higher self isn't making the rules. Your higher self doesn't run you. You run the show. So you're asking higher self, is it in my highest and best good to take this action, action
Okay.
step? And the other thing is, there are people who they always wear the same jewelry with this same outfit, and they're very good at figuring out what they want to do in a situation, and they don't deviate, so they cut through right away. But those people, sorry, those people need to make a list of the things they are willing to negotiate. Because if you always wear, this favorite pair of shoes with this outfit, don't ask. Just wear what you're used to and pick things to practice on that you don't care about. And when I say don't care, it doesn't mean like you don't have any attachment. It simply means you're willing to either wear the favorite shoes or if you get told to wear something different. If you really like to wear white, for example, or light colors, and you get told to wear red one day, you're thinking, I don't know. Red's not my best color, but that's the day you spill salsa or ketchup on yourself and you think, oh, that's pretty cool. At least I didn't ruin a good white shirt.
Yes. Well, thank you for clarifying, because I think a lot of people might have those questions of wanting to control some of it, right? And so, the whole point is ask about nonsensical sort of things that aren't super important, and
Well, they don't
go
have to
with
be
what you're
nonsensical.
told. Okay.
Yeah, I actually had a guy ask me, this isn't working. And I said, well, what are you asking? And he said, well, I'm asking if I should put my right shoe on first before my left. And I started to laugh and said, you're planning on putting on both shoes. That's not an appropriate question.
Got it.
You're gonna wear shoes. You're not in Hawaii where you're gonna wander around in your bare feet all day. So unimportant isn't always nonsensical. Sometimes they might be, but the idea here is unimportant means you're willing to move forward if you get a yes, and you're willing to unhook from that idea and move on to something else. You know, I was working in corporate as a PR person and fundraiser, and I had a job of getting some PR out for my nonprofit. And I had called this reporter maybe 4 or 5 times during the day and never got through. And at 5 minutes till 5, I got through. And it wasn't because I wanted to call the guy, it's because my higher self came in and told me. And I've had many experiences where I have tried to do something and it doesn't work out. You know, just everyday stuff that you want to do, need to do for whatever reason, doesn't work out. And then your higher self tells you, do this. And that's the benefit of after the 6 weeks practice, that kind of thing happens on a regular basis. Another time I was looking in my closet at a favorite pair of pants, and I remember thinking, oh, I really need a jacket to go with these pants. And the next day, my husband had said to me, you want to go, I've got an errand to run at this new bank. Do you want to go with me? And then we'll go out for lunch. And I said, sure. So we went and we got in the restaurant, and I remembered I'd forgotten my supplements. So I said, well, I'll be right back. I'm just going to run and get my supplements while they fix our food. So as I'm walking back, I walk by a store, and the store has this beautiful pair of pants beautiful jacket that goes with my pants. And so I think, oh, I'll just quick run in and see if they got my size. They did. I bought it. And my husband said, it took you a little longer than I expected. I just laughed because I now had exactly what I had asked for the day before. And that's one of the things that starts to happen. When we start working with our higher self, we're actually moving into sovereignty. And I know that that's something we're going to talk about later, but when we start working with our higher self, we bypass the matrix. We're able to step out of all of the effluvia and all the stuff that's being broadcast to us. You know, there's this whole thing that's happening. I'll call it silently. And I'll give you an example. I was in a hardware store with my husband, and we happened to walk by the grills and saw that they had this very cool looking pizza oven. Now, we don't have any interest in buying that, but we were intrigued because it was a really cool device. So we look at it and we chat about it. And when we got home, on his phone were ads for a pizza oven. Scary, but it proves without a doubt that there's stuff being broadcast at us that we don't even know about. And if that's true, how do we step out of it? How do we step above it? And, you know, one of the ways is if you build that connection with your higher self, you are able to see it for what it is and dismiss it. Yeah. When I was younger, there was this newspaper that would come to my front door. And the only thing you would do with it is pick it up and put it in the garbage, unless you were looking for a car or a sweetheart. And one day it dawned on me that I could actually call the company and say, could you ask whoever's delivering this to stop delivering it? Because I'm not reading it. That's what the higher self is like. It's that extra step that takes you to a level of communication and understanding with who you really are.
Yeah, and then you get to bypass all the programs that you are not aware of and that you are aware of, i.e. the cell phone listening, you know, devices picking up on what your conversations are and then giving you advertising, or next thing you know, the spam calls start coming in. And so how do you discern yourself from that? And how do you distinguish yourself from choices that you're actually making, or choices that your higher self is assisting you with making? And the only way to do that is desensitize yourself by becoming more familiar with the innate voice of the higher self. That's how I look at it. So then you're not as influenced by all the incoming advertising or conversations that happen that follow you, whether you want it or not. It's on your phone, it's on your computer. someone next to you starts talking about the exact same thing, and you can bypass a lot of that by getting more connected with your higher self. So thank you for bringing that around. So what are some of the other things you'd like to discuss about higher self and a stronger connection with higher self?
Well, one of the things that happens is once you have a good connection with your higher self, then when your other gifts come on board, and I believe they are coming on board for many people, especially we all know there's going to be a big leveling up. Some people call it the first wave of ascension. I call it graduation, as you know. And I think that part of that is everyone's going to be leveled up in terms of their abilities. So they're going to be more intuitive, and they're not necessarily going to know right away. You know, they might call you and say, "Oh, I was thinking about blah blah blah," and you kind of pause and you say, "I was just thinking that, and I was just thinking about you and how we might do that." And this happens enough time, and all of a sudden they realize, "Oh, I'm really hearing and energetically connecting with my family and friends." And then there may be other things, people know healing touch or Reiki, and they work on people, but it's way more powerful. And they'll have a client that says, this session was amazing. Not to say that the previous ones weren't any good, but they were, but this was amazing. And you hear that enough times and you start to realize, oh, the volume has been turned up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with the higher self connection, then you can ask higher self, did I get a boost in my healing abilities? Higher self, am I more intuitive than I was 2 months ago? Higher self, am I getting clearer information? And one of the ways that we do that is to connect with the Akashic Records. And I teach that as well. And I have found that both the higher self and the Akashic Records are synergistic in that once you learn one of them, learning the other is very easy. And conversely, once you have one or the other or both, all of your other gifts also start to grow and expand. Yeah. It's a little bit like, if you work out and then somebody says, well, I want to go on a hike, but it's 10 miles. Do you think you can do it? You've been working out. You know you can do it, even though you haven't been doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what would you say? Let's go back to the question of the higher self oversoul question.
Oh, yes.
Let's go back to
So,
that one because I know that's a big one that a lot of people have
mhm,
because everyone hears these different brands and words thrown out and they all have their own opinions to them. What would you say to the difference between those two,
well, first of all,
if any?
I have been working with the Oversoul with people for a while, and let's just explain it this way. Um, each individual version of you is like the tentacle of a jellyfish, and then the jellyfish is your Oversoul. And then your divine monad, your divine spark, that's your soul. And so even though we call it the oversoul, it's actually in the middle. And then what's above it is your God spark, your original source energy. So one of the things that I did was I developed a guided meditation to help you unify and align all the versions of you. And we do that at the oversoul level. And we charge up the oversoul with a lot of light from the great central sun. And we integrate that. So if you're interested in something like that, just send me a quick email, Maureen at St. Germain Mystery School, and put in the subject matter Oversoul Meditation. And I will be happy to send it to you. We actually do have an app with 40 some guided meditations on it, but that's so new that it hasn't been put into the latest update yet. So I'm happy to share it with you and help you grow your interest in our programming.
Absolutely. And I'll have those links in the description too. I think the key is understanding how to stop, drop, sit, and connect with your breath and become aware that there's something out here or around you or in you that is so much bigger than you
Mhm.
ever thought, or maybe didn't connect with. So it may come, and things are a little different right now. How do I respond to this? Or I feel like I'm responding differently than I did last week or last month. And that is a lot of
Absolutely.
our energies coming online. And that is a stronger connection with the higher self. So the way I see it is you have your source energy soul that has every memory from the beginning to now. And then the oversoul is just, this is how I've seen it, is just below that, that has a lot of the container of information, of lessons that you want to learn now, that you came in, that you want to learn to step up, right? And step away from the programming. And then the higher self is sort of like that energy, that etheric energy around the body that filters the energy in, that tries to come into the body and communicate with you and let you know this isn't your mind, this isn't your ego, this is a different pathway of communication. I just see it now as that information comes in and I got to keep it out of the ego container, because those two like to have a tango sometimes. And and then there's like, okay, then it gets watered down, or the information gets different, and then we dismiss where we got the information from. So getting that information can be different for everybody, but I've just seen it in that sort of like that Russian doll, all the way from source down to where you are, but you're not necessarily the smallest popping out, but you're getting information from the higher you and the higher you and the higher you. And each of you are the source creator of all that is and all that I am. And so we just haven't tapped into big sister, big brother. We haven't been taught that that's
Yeah.
okay.
And one of the ways you know this is happening is you'll meet someone who's another version of you that's still part of your oversoul. And you'll
Hello,
have
Maureen.
and you'll have this instant connection
Yeah.
and you'll feel like you've known them forever.
Yeah.
And sometimes these people move in, they help you with a project or something you're working on, and then they're gone. And you think to yourself, yeah, but we had such a nice connection. And the answer is, yeah, but they're another version of you that came in with a skill set you didn't have that you needed right now.
Mhm.
And then they went on to whatever. So that's one of the ways you know, number one, it is another version of you. And number two, that you have asked for a certain piece of information or certain support and you got it. You know, one of my first editors was another version of me. And it was quite interesting because she was giving me some pretty strong advice. And, you know, when you're writing, you don't always want to hear it. And then there's another story of a well-known author named Walter Simcoe. And I have been teaching about other versions of you that show up and work with you. And so one of my students was at a lecture that Walter gave. And she went up to him at the end and said, you know, one of the teachers I study with says this about other versions of you. And what do you think about it? Now, what I want to address here is Walter Simcoe has written a book called Return of the Revolutionaries. And this book is about all the people that we love and admire, and I'll use Marianne Williamson as an example, who were somebody else, like Martha Washington, in the past. And they've come back to ensure that we, I'll use the word, make it. And so the book is very poignant and very valuable. And anybody can learn a little bit about this work just by going to his website, because he has a lot of information on his website. And he's a medical doctor. So he's giving a lecture in Hong Kong. And this man from India walks up to him, also a medical doctor. And they start to talk. And Walter recognizes that it's another version of him because they start to talk about work that they were going to do. And Walter says, you know, I started to work on this project, but then I left it because I wanted to focus more on this. And the other doctor says, well, I picked that up. And it's almost like, just to be playful, at night, we go for coffee in heaven and we meet up with other versions of ourselves. And I don't really want to take this gig. Do you want to take it? Yeah, I'll pick it up. And then, you know, you connect in 3D. So there's that element that occurs. And I've had so many people that I have recognized as other versions of themselves that they'll come to me and say, we think that we're other versions of each other. What do you think? So
Well,
many wonderful synchronicities.
I think there's many of those scenarios that we have, and it's like, how do you meet somebody and instantly go, I've never met you before. We're talking the same language as a resonance of just compatibility. There's something familiar about them, but you've never stepped in the same postage stamp of the area before in your life. Sometimes you'll have these conversations and you'll go, I feel like I've already had this conversation, like verbatim. Or you look at them and you're like, oh, I know for a fact we've met and I can tell you where. And they're like, nope, never lived there. Nope. So there's so many different versions of ourselves that come forth to give us a hand. And that's the beautiful thing also about connecting with the higher self, because when you resonate and vibrate with the higher self, you're working as one unit because you become one embodiment. And when you're on those frequencies, all of a sudden the frequencies that do not resonate fade away. And
Mhm.
some of those friends, families, or circles, oh, I don't really hear from them anymore. Oh, and you didn't have to block them. You didn't have to have a reason to have a big fight. They just kind of get moved over here for a little bit because you're working on this at the moment, right? Doesn't mean
Exactly.
one's better than the other. It just means while you're working on this, we don't want these interferences, frequencies, not the people so much, but the frequencies, the interference. So I like to be nice about that, because some of the people do need to be swept away because they're not so nice or they're not in our best interest. But I like to just say you're not in a vibrational match at this time.
Right.
So the good Lord split you.
Right. That's great. Totally
Yeah.
great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So as far as those exercises go, and we do want to keep it spiritually simple, right? At all times. So we're going to suggest that everybody take their calendar today and mark 45 days from now, and then begin to ask your questions that are so let's give a quick reminder of what that little exercise is, and then we'll end it. And unless there's something else you want to add.
That sounds awesome. I'll do
Great.
that. So the protocol is ask unimportant, insignificant questions that you don't care about, like what clothes you're going to wear, what food you're going to eat, what direction you're going to take, what street you walk on, and so on. Always ask the same way. Higher self, is it in my highest and best good to, and then take this action step. And it's always about you during your practice period. Then that's number one. Number two, always follow through. If you ask, follow through, because you're developing an inner muscle with your higher self. And then number three, set aside all your divination tools for the 6 weeks. You can always go back to them if you want, but you'll find your higher self connection is far more accurate than any pendulum or any other work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can't be using them to double check, because it's not about what's right and wrong, because you're asking about unimportant stuff. So there is no right and wrong. So that's your 45-day protocol, 45 days of practice. And at the end of that, your higher self and you will be best friends, and maybe even so aligned that when you ask your higher self something that's really hard, your higher self can come through with a clear answer, which is the goal.
Well, that is a very easy technique. And I'm going to tell you guys, from somebody who's had to learn all of this on their own, I wish I had a technique at some point in time that could have helped me connect. And I feel like there was a lot of lost time in there because I was floundering on my own. But now we have people who have pioneered through a lot of things that are presenting things to tools and techniques to help you really tune into you. Now, I love what you're saying about the other divinations and tools. Most people will reach for those as being their number one, I go to this and I do a feather, or I do kinesiology, or I do a pendulum, or I do this or that, or with the other, or I call a psychic medium, or this is how I get my information and filter it. And if it confirms, once you start walking with the DNA of you, me, myself, and I of the higher self, every step you take and do will be as oneness. And you'll know, is this this particular food for my highest good at this moment? Is going to this place, and if it's not, am I willing to switch my tune quickly? So you wind up walking together with this compass that balances and counterbalances and harmonizes everything, and that feels so natural that it just becomes second nature. So if you can take the 6 weeks, follow Maureen's protocol here, get her books, get on her website, email her if you have additional questions. And, we can always follow up with this particular segment with the same topic and maybe some other tools, protocols, and techniques to help you, because we are in times right now where we have got to step away and self-develop. And if you are in situations where you can't reach for that pendulum and all you have is the me, myself, and I in bareness, you better learn how to connect all the dots and get the answers before you take an action that are best for you and best for those that are around you in that immediate moment. What would you have anything to add to that?
No, and I love the fact that you keep qualifying it with right now in the immediate moment, because
Yes.
things do change and it's
Yes,
fabulous.
they do. Yes, they do. And all you have is this moment. So we keep, you hear so many people talking about the present time, be in the now, be in the now, but you could be in the now and you're in the now, but your mind is still fluttering forward, or it's still recycling the old stuff, right? And so learning how to be in the now is communing with this divine counterpart of who you are. And, I could tell stories about how I met mine. And let me tell you, there isn't a decision or a choice or an action or breath that I take for granted. I commune constantly with my higher self, because it's me, it's Sandy, it's who I am, right? It's not out here away from me. It's my mirror image. It's my reflection of who I am. And the more you develop that, the more you're going to just know which direction to go in a lickety split. Yes. Well, Maureen, this has been so much fun. We got to do this again.
I agree. And I really enjoyed the synchronicity and the wonderful expressions that you've added to this information. It's very valuable, very useful, and I'm grateful. So thank you for having me.
I am so grateful. All right, everybody, please remember to hit that like, subscribe, and share. All the links to this show will be in the description. If you are listening to us on Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and so on, and you want to see the picture version of what we look like, hop over to YouTube. And again, like, subscribe, and share while you're there. And again, the links for Maureen and myself will be in the description. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Keep It Spiritually Simple. So I'm going to say goodbye, everybody. All right. See you next time.